and welcome to the Filmstein Podcast for another Abridged episode where we give some fresh thoughts, typically right out of the theater. And I'm joined by my shadow of a friend, Lucy.
Hello, everyone.
I'm glad everybody could join us today. Thank you guys very much for being here, because today we will be discussing Jacob Schreier's 2025 release, Thunderbolts. And I'm happy to report back that I liked this film well enough.
It's a great start.
I like to see that the camera is interested in the only thing interesting in the movie, and that is Florence Pugh and David Harbour. I wish we could have gotten much, much more of them. Maybe just a movie with the two of them. I, of course, like this obvious self-awareness of Disney and Marvel coming at us with understanding that Marvel, the current state of Marvel, is nothing but a shadow of its former self. And there seems to be, at least as far as Thunderbolts, maybe this has popped up several times in other Marvel films throughout these couple of last phases where things haven't been so hot for Marvel and Disney, but it seems like there's a proper symbolic turning of the page. I don't know what Ava Starr Ghost was doing here. She was, at the very best, distracting. At the very worst, a waste of screen time, a waste of family connection. Sebastian Stan didn't seem like he really wanted to be here. Maybe it's explained through all of the many hours of other Marvel mediums and avenues. Why are they treating Bucky like he's not an Avenger? He was kind of there at the worst of it, right? So I feel like he's an equal to the Captain Americas. And this, I guess, goes for the Falcon guy. But I don't know. It's just a little awkward feeling to me. Valentina was very underwhelming, although I do like the twist, if you want to call it that, of where we land with her kind of being in the pocket of the new Avengers. That's interesting. But all in all, this movie isn't doing much for me. It doesn't seem to really know how to characterize and humanize these so-called people. I appreciate the old college try of introducing pain and problems to super-oriented people, but we can't seem to give enough time between anyone, or maybe we have too many dynamics kind of at hand to give the sufficient amount of time to build any kind of sad relationships, redeeming relationships. I appreciate the effort, and of course Florence Pugh and David Harbour carry this movie on their backs, but I'm very curious, how do you feel about Thunderbolts?
I enjoyed this film quite a bit, but there were several things I didn't like, and a lot of things I really liked. I completely agree with you. Florence Pugh and David Harbour carry the film. Their relationship as Yelena and the Red Guardian, daughter and dad, was pretty darn cute. It was the best part of the film. It was the parts of the film that made me feel something. I'm glad we started with her and mainly focused on her. Florence Pugh delivered what she could with what she had, and it was awesome.
Yeah, all the close-ups really help, because she's very lip-driven.
Yeah, her lips definitely tell a story, I guess. I might agree with a lot of what you say, maybe for different things. Bucky, Sebastian Stan, was definitely one of the weaker parts of the film. I don't know where we left him past Thanos. The Bucky I remember definitely didn't feel like this. It feels like in this world, post our traditional Avengers, nobody knows what to do, like in the real world. And it definitely shows through his character. Yeah, he became a congressman, and that threw me off, but I mean, okay. All the sections with him felt unnecessary, I guess. Towards the beginning, maybe the first act, when we did focus on him, we were mainly focusing on Valentina and Mel and their relationship and where they stand in this plot, in the story. But any interaction he had with the government, it just felt off to me. I didn't know what he was doing. He looked rough, I'm not gonna lie. And there was a section in there where Valentina says, "Oh, at least you're kind of cute." And I was like, no, Bucky's not looking kind of cute right now. I don't know what we're doing with him, but we need to fix him. Something needs to happen. I don't know what. As far as the rest of the ensemble, this Ghost Ava character, I don't know if she was a waste of screen time because I liked each and every single one of the Thunderbolts and what they each had to represent, but she did seem the most underdeveloped. I honestly don't know what she did, like what was her superpower or her tech power. I don't know what we're calling it when it's technology based and not, injected into you like Bob here. But I was a bit lost on that. The Bobo Captain America was a great addition. I thought he was one of the more interesting ones for sure. His backstory was pretty cool. I wanted to know a little bit more about it.
Yeah, he actually seems to be the single great addition, being this kind of discount Captain America who has some setup. And you could almost think that there's going to be some kind of moment where he becomes the leader in this film. It's not a terrible idea to think that he's going to have that payoff in a later film too, though.
Yes.
Because he's actually been characterized to some degree, unlike Ava Ghost, who probably should have just died in this one.
Yeah, I agree with that. Maybe we get a payoff for him or any of our other characters, any kind of development in later films. Which is a good point too, by the way, because the Avenger films, like Avengers, Age of Ultron, Endgame, all those films aren't here to set up any characters. Each of the characters already have their own films, already have their own development and their backstory, how they intertwine with each other. I could see an awesome film with Florence Pugh and David Harbour and developing it there instead of in an Avengers type film. So I'm not too mad at that. I'm glad we didn't focus on them if we're going to focus on them later in their own proper movie.
I can't wait for that Ava Star Ghost movie.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if I can wait for that one either. But a John Walker one would be cool. I also like that we kept a lot of traditional elements in this film. This sense of wrong and right. This theme of you're not alone in this world. You need friends, family, somebody behind you to stand with you, even if it's a weird connection like Yelena and Bob had. She really helped him out there. Some of these themes, even though we keep using them in film, in art, in whatever, they're there for a reason because they're so important to keep in mind. I also like that Yelena had this existential crisis about her job and just how any job is boring when your heart's not in it or not having a purpose in life. Even though she's doing something kind of exciting and awesome, like beating up bad guys, I like that she needs some other sort of fulfillment in life from this superhero / anti-hero person she is. And I really enjoyed this element of confronting your demons, your inner demons we get from Bob, Sentry. I really like that.
Yeah, they almost had something there if they could have just explored one's loneliness a little bit more. Especially earlier on because okay, we get enough with Lena and the Red Guardian to help identify that Lena just wants to be reached out to be thought about kind of thing, and how much mileage you can get out of something so trivial. Because there is this kind of element of work getting in the way of life.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of the inverse of that too with the Red Guardian, where he is not working. He is on the opposite side of that spectrum where he is letting laziness, I guess, get in the way of life.
Yeah, almost like he's reliving the glory days internally on his couch.
And so that kind of climaxing with this team coming together, very Naruto style, of talking someone down, that they are valued more than they could ever imagine, is really good stuff. It just forgets some of the beats that would have helped make this a real movie. And I think it has everything to do with how many people are just involved.
No, I definitely agree. If each of these characters had their own development time, we would actually feel the loneliness they're feeling and not just be told that these are oddballs, lonely people who now come together to form a team. I feel it through Yelena and the Red Guardian, but I don't quite feel it through Bucky or John Walker or Ghost.
Yeah, and they go really over the top with, delivering this empathy to us because Bob, Century's, I guess, kind of core power is him seeing the inside of you, the trauma, the things you're hung up on, the things that define you to yourself.
Your inner demons.
Speaking of which, Bob and Valentina's interactions were probably the worst parts of this film. And I suppose to kind of back that up even further, Valentina is really the crux of every problem with this film, minus Ghost, but I guess she works for Valentina, so there you go. Her motivation, Julia's uninterest in being on set, Valentina's relationship with Mel, and then Century, it's arguably the most important part of the film because it motivates the entirety of the movement. Yet I couldn't have felt more underwhelmed by her presence, her actions, her performance, her relationship with Mel. She was a confusing character.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that because I hadn't given her much thought. She was just there as a plot device to move the story along. I didn't really see her as the true villain. I thought Century was going to be more of the villain than she was. She was obviously not doing something great here. But there was a scene in the film that really stuck out to me, and I just thought it was so bad, but I didn't know why. So I thought maybe it was just me at that moment. But it was a scene where she and Mel are in the limousine right before we discover that the Red Guardian is the limousine driver. And I don't really know what was said in that scene, but just that interaction between the two was so awkward, so weird. And how she stepped out of that limousine after they opened the door for her just gave me a bad feeling, but I didn't know why. So I'm glad you said that because I think that helps explain why I felt that way. All her interactions were awkward. I liked her character, that she was just trying to get out of trouble. She's trying to get rid of evidence. We needed to develop that further and kind of give us why and why it matters to us. And I guess that's where Bob comes in, but then even that relationship was rushed. When this is supposed to be her project, her baby, her golden hour.
Yeah, Valentina's very awkward when she's on screen. Mel's very awkward too, but she could have been awkward in almost a charming way if she had someone to bounce off of that was worth her salt. I thought you were going to say the scene that was really terrible was the one with Valentina and Bob after Bob had beat up the New Avengers, the Thunderbolts. Because that interaction and the hair thing, that happened actually a few times where they were like, the hair, and then that happened earlier with Bucky and when he was talking to someone on the phone and they were all like, Bob. It's just like, I can't do this anymore, ever, actually. I like the idea of the government being against the government, pretending like there's a good guy in the government. That's a fun idea. And I suppose the film's self-aware enough with Valentina to acknowledge that there are no good people in the government, that there's bad guys and there's worse guys.
Yeah, but that's what all the bad guys say. That's the bad guy 101 excuse.
It might be, and I hate to say that a lot of bad guys in superhero films, in films that have kind of a cult of personality bad guy, they're usually pretty underbaked. And I don't know, but I don't think the destination's ever really the point with these kinds of films. And they do kind of make it a point in this film that that's true, because Valentina doesn't get her, just desserts. She's now in the pocket of the New Avengers, which is way more satisfying than, the Red Guardian ripping her too. Which is kind of funny too, because that seemed to be the only reason Bucky was involved, was to stop the Red Guardian at that exact moment. No, it's going to be terrible for PR. We got to impeach her or whatever. Because he's completely pointless. He doesn't bring these people together. Mm-hmm. He doesn't chauffeur them to New York. They know where they're going. So yeah, Bucky just, from every angle, seems pretty pointless. And the fact that he's a congressman is distracting, at the very least.
I actually like the Bob interaction on the phone.
God.
That was pretty funny. I didn't like the hair thing. That was weird. Not funny. A lot of the humor here is the traditional Marvel bro humor that I don't find as funny. But everything the Red Guardian did was hilarious, cracked me up.
It does help when you have great delivery, and David Harbour as a side piece is excellent.
Yes, for sure. There were also quite a few fourth wall breaking moments with the marketing jokes and the Disney jokes. I don't like those. They really deter me from this world I'm trying to get into. I don't like that self-awareness that Disney has. We had it in Deadpool. I wasn't a fan of it there, even though I really enjoyed the Deadpool and Wolverine movie. There's times when the fourth wall jokes are funny, the fourth wall looks are funny, but they're very rare for me. I think in the Leo film, Revenant, there was a moment where the bear spits at the camera or something, and I don't like those moments. I just don't. They don't sit well with me. I get distracted. I get brought back to, oh, I'm at the movie theater watching a Disney movie that's making fun of themselves. I don't like it. Those are the ones that I have more of a problem with than the silly jokes, the Bob jokes. I did love the sequence where we have Sentry. He's now all in black, a shadow, and he starts poofing people, and that really reminded me of the outlines that were left behind from the atomic bomb in Hiroshima. And it was pretty dark. And everything else that happened after the feel-good moments, I did tear up a little bit when Yelena and her daddy were having a heart-to-heart. She finally felt alive. She felt free. She felt like she had something to live for. And even the obvious feel-good moment where they start lifting up that stone to save the lady, it was good. You got me.
I was like, this is so stupid.
And I'm over here crying.
Can't Bucky just move this by himself?
They were all hurt. They just got beat up, okay? Let me have it. And then, I was already in my feels. And then we have the moment where the Red Guardian saves that little girl. And you're like, oh, he saved a little girl, and then he just had a heart-to-heart with his little girl. And poof, she's gone. I was like, my mouth couldn't just be any more open right now. I gasped. It was good. It was really good. And then Yelena gets swallowed by the darkness, and I'm like, oh my god, this is probably my entire favorite part of the film, where I felt the most. Maybe the first act, the introduction, setting everything up was a bit slower paced, maybe a bit boring.
And the second act.
I was fine with the second act. When they finally got out of that incinerator vault place, when Daddy Guardian picked them up, it started really picking up for me. I also liked how the plot, at least beat per beat, had a good explanation on how we got there. Like Mel calling Bucky and saying, hey, you can track my phone, right? And not just Bucky randomly showing up to save the day. The only one that, although I liked, didn't have an explanation was, how did the Red Guardian know where his daughter was? I wish we would have gotten an explanation for that, like, oh, wow, well, I've been tracking you or something. I don't know. But everything else was actually pretty well explained. And that seems to falter a bit in superhero types of films, where you're like, wait, how did they come into the picture?
No, for sure. That's just like along the lines of when a character enters a room and they start to do an action and a cut happens and the action has been done without us seeing the character follow through. It's kind of similar, but on a giant scale with superheroes and big, ambitious storytelling.
And it almost feels like if Captain America, Steve Rogers, Chris Evans, showed up randomly in a film, he has that reputation for it to be a feel-good, non-explanation type of moment where Captain America is just here to save the day. Bucky doesn't have that reputation. None of these new guys have that reputation for me to feel that. So I liked that it was explained.
Yeah, the only bit of setup we had with the Red Guardian knowing where Lena was, I guess, was because he was driving the limo with Valentina and Mel. Although they were talking in some kind of code. Sort of.
Yeah, maybe he followed them there. How do you feel about the future of these new Avengers and the dilemma that was brought up that now Falcon has some new Avengers and who's the real Avengers here? And I'm assuming that's why there's an asterisk next to Thunderbolts. They're playing with this idea that this might or might not be who they are, subject to change. And your thoughts on the end credit scene with the 4 on a big spaceship?
Yeah, there's some fun to have there, but I thought we already had that with Civil War on some level. Not to say we can't do it again, because now we have this maybe more anti-Avengers and more traditional Avengers. I don't really know where they could take it, what could happen if these casts are up for a similar future to what we had with the first, I guess, 3 phases of Avengers, Marvel. So it's definitely a wait and see kind of moment. But the idea of an anti-Avengers, legacy Avengers, crossing paths with the Fantastic Four, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty excited about the new future for the Marvel films. I was a fan of pretty much everything Thanos, and before everything after that, including all the new shows and the films and even the most recent one with the Red Hulk. That didn't get me excited, but this film gave me a spark for sure.
All right, man. Well, thank you very much for watching this movie and talking about it here today.
You're welcome.
Do you have a budget guess?
It's Disney and it's Marvel, so I'm assuming it's pretty high. Definitely over 150. Did it reach the 200s? I don't know. So I think I'm going to go with 175.
Well, it says here that it was 180 million.
Ooh.
And over on Letterboxd with 325,000 people, they weighed in at a 3.8.
Oh, wow. That's actually higher than I thought it was going to be, which is good. I'm giving this a 3. Entertained me. Very good watch. There's a lot here to love. There's a lot not to love. But overall, it was a decent watch. I loved all the fighting. I liked our new characters. Great casting with Florence Pugh and David Harbour. We had some deeper themes than traditional superhero movies. But there was still a lot to figure out as far as characters. And I can't wait to hear your score.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty underwhelming. There's a lot of, well, there's some good in this film, and that is Florence Pugh and David Harbour, no doubt. And then most of the rest of the film is just okay to pretty bad. Everything with Valentina is hard to watch. It's just terrible storytelling, terrible motivation, terrible performance. Bucky's weird inclusion. Ghost is even weirder. We could have nixed them. We could have put all of that time into Walker and Lena and Red Guardian's relationship. And maybe we could have had a Grey's Anatomy moment where our characters are learning about their problems through other people's problems, which we get a little bit here, but bringing some kind of emphasis to that would have been great. So I don't know. The Florence Pugh and David Harbour together moments are a 3.5, you know? Valentina's moments are a half star. I'm somewhere between a 2 and a 2.5, maybe leaning 2. Yeah, man, thank you again, and thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Filmistines. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Remember, we post every Monday with an abridged episode, and Wednesday and Friday for core, normal episodes on all of our free feeds like YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Patreon. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas on our Patreon as well. Come subscribe. Come right in. Come request a movie. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys very much. But until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Filmistines. Thanks for tuning in and joining us on our cinematic journey. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and gained some new insights and perspectives on the world of movies. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, especially Patreon at patreon.com/Filmistines. And follow us on social media for more film-related content. We love hearing from our listeners, so if you have any feedback, suggestions, movie recommendations, or book recommendations, please feel free to reach out to us. Until next time, keep watching and keep loving the magic of movies. This is the Filmistines, signing off.